There's a revolution brewing in the hearts and the minds of the awake. There's a revolution waking from slumber in the minds of those who are yet to fully realize what's happening around the world, but have an inner stirring, an inner voice calling to them, reminding them that they want to be free. Sometimes you see traces of this revolution on the street. You see signs being held and flyers being passed out and voices speaking through megaphones. Occasionally, you hear the revolution over the radio or through the internet. Sometimes you might even smell the revolution growing in your garden. But ultimately, this revolution remains in the hearts and minds of the individual. And that is you, and that is me. Together, as we spread this message of liberty, of true freedom, of self-rule, of responsibility, of mutual aid, of voluntary association, if we spread these ideas of freedom, they continue to grow. And ultimately, we will reach a tipping point where the ideas of freedom have overtaken the ideas of statism, the idea of government as parent figure or savior. And when we reach that point, and we will, we'll look back on the past, our current present, and wonder how we ever even lost the idea of freedom. It'll seem so obvious, like it's been there the entire time waiting for us. Because it is. And there are those who have not yet found this message. There are those who are still caught up in their own emotional muck or stuck in the day-to-day grind of the machine that is the state, attempting to give purpose to their lives, give purpose to the drudgery that we're told is just a part of life. That every good, honest person should be working a 9-to-5 job, should be a slave to the very system that we're told we need to exist. And these people who find themselves in these situations, there's nothing wrong with them. They're not sheeple. They're human beings, just as you or I, who have not yet come across this message. Does that mean we're the chosen ones and they are somehow lost in the wind? Not at all. There's no difference between you or anyone else who has not yet heard this message. We were all once in that place. And the only way we came to this place, where we consider ourselves to be aware or awake or in the process of educating ourselves so that we can move past these things, is because other people chose to keep the message alive and to pass it back to us. Now, as people begin to let go of this facade, this belief that we need the state, and people begin to wake up to the corporations and to the banks and to the way that they work together with the state, and they realize not only the power of the message of liberty, because that is definitely one step, and I know some of you got that, but then go even further and recognize that it's not just the state itself, but that there are people who run the state and control the state. There are a they. And once those people who are blind to the matrix are confronted with this information, they are also confronted with a choice. It requires them to face the fact that their life has been built upon a lie, and that everything that we've been told is a lie, and that there's something better. That also requires them to do something. And I know it's a scary choice, but it's one that's worth making. So when you see or find yourself, friends, family, who are relying on the state, and that is what keeps them from wanting to question, confront them with information, confront them with an education about what's really taking place in the world. Because only once we give up the treats and the goodies and the self-indulgences and this trough that the state has us feeding at, can we truly take the power from it and pull the rug up from under the state. But it's going to require us to let go and to stop being so afraid to let go. That includes taking care of your heart, your mind, your soul, your physical body, taking care of your education, taking care of those around you. I believe in you. I believe in the power of us to come together as empowered individuals and to not lose ourselves, but to only become stronger when we're joined together.
Preview, I guess you could say, or a short version of a documentary that somebody put together by words. When did that come out? This was back in like, let me see, 2013, 2014. It's on 2016, excuse me, and I just shared it in the comments. It's just called The Conscious Resistance, featuring Derrick Broze, and it's just my words that this awesome editor took some of my my podcasts, my old podcasts, and repurposed them and turned them into this powerful message, as it were. So I appreciate that. All right, so this is the first time I'm doing a live podcast since December 2019. Of course, I've done other live videos, but this is the Conscious Resistance Live episode number 106. I think we finally got to, since 2013, we've got to 106, 107 episodes. And as you guys know, are pretty well aware, I'm a very busy person, as many of us are, working on important topics. And holy shit, since the last time I did this show, things have gotten a bit crazy. Before we get any further, though, I want to remind everybody who is watching, who's listening, to please do follow our website, theconsciousresistance.com. If you guys don't mind, go ahead and jump over here to theconsciousresistance.com. You can bookmark the website, hit Control-D, follow us on minds.com, follow us on Hive, join our Discord channel, sign up for my text list, guys. This is the easiest way to get a text message to make sure that you get everything that I share out there and you don't want to have to worry about relying on social media platforms. But some of you might be watching this right now via Float. I'm also on float.app. /conscious resistance. I recommend checking that out. All of our videos are archived on BitChute. They're also archived on Library. And of course, if you want to support, you can do so at patreon.com/Derrick Broze. One other thing I want to tell you guys as far as house cleaning goes, you can check out here under the About tab right here, go up to updates. You can see network updates. Just every now and then I post some sort of like, here's what's going on behind the scenes, upcoming events, and just important things you might want to know. Speaking of upcoming events, I'll talk more about this at the end of the show. We're aiming for about an hour, so I don't get long-winded. At the end of the show, we're going to talk about solutions. Some of the solutions that I'm focused on right now, as you guys know, are the Freedom Cell Network. So tomorrow at 12 p.m. Central, I'll be giving an online presentation called How to Localize, Decentralize, and Opt Out of the Matrix, which will be live right here on the Conscious Resistance Network on all of our platforms. And then immediately after that, at 2 p.m. Central, I'll be hosting the third international, it says intentional, but International Freedom Cell Conference Call. You can join the Zoom or bookmark that right there. So that's just going to be an hour to hour and a half of people all around the world. I know we've got the Australians, we've got people in Europe tuning in, and people who are either already building freedom cells, groups, hub circles, decentralizing, unplugging from these various systems that we're trying to wake up from, and people who are just starting and who have questions. So if you want to get involved in the Freedom Cell Network, if you haven't checked out freedomcells.org, please do. But if you want to get more involved, tomorrow, again, I'll be doing a talk at 12 p.m., slideshow and all that good stuff, how to localize, decentralize, and opt out of the matrix, and then followed by hosting the third International Freedom Cell Conference Call at 2 p.m. Central. And then just to let you know, again, on Sunday, there's a full day event that I'm a part of. It's from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Central. It's called Ecoversity, What's Next? Conversations for Change. And I'm going to be talking about decentralization, freedom cells, and creating a more sustainable post-COVID world. I don't believe I have my own talk. I will be a part of a panel. But if you go check out the website, guys, there's awesome activists and musicians, and Alex Gray and Allison Gray are going to be a part of it. And so there's going to be talks of permaculture and all kinds of awesome stuff. And I'll tell you even more next week. Next Sunday, I'm going to be a part of this Shielded Health 5G Summit, and I'll talk about that more in the show if I don't forget. So what we're going to be talking about, what we're going to be focusing on is my articles. Guys, for those who haven't seen my social media updates or some of my announcements recently, there are a couple of big things that have happened. For one, I have been writing again for MintPress News, most recently an investigation that we're going to cover here, a two-part investigation. The second part will be coming out next week. And then I also recently joined the Last American Vagabond team. Many of you know Ryan and his great work. And recently the network, the website, everything's just been growing. And I have to say thanks to my friends Jason Burmis and James Corbett and Ryan and Adam from No More News and everybody else who has big platforms that wants to help get my work out there, and other people even with smaller platforms who find my work interesting. I'm thankful to all of you, and I constantly everything's just been exponentially increasing, and I feel blessed every day. So many of you are messaging me with positive reinforcement. Yesterday, I saw RFK shared my 5G investigation on Twitter, and Kelly Brogan, a holistic psychiatrist who's does some really cool work, she shared my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. So things are going well. And also, guys, I'm just kind of, before we get into the news, for those of you who want us to come for the news, just please be patient. I signed me and my co-author, John Vives, we signed a publishing deal with Discovery Publishers. They're based out of Ireland, I believe, in the UK. And we just officially signed contracts. We are going to be re-releasing our trilogy, the Conscious Resistance trilogy, which was, the first book was introduced in 2015, second in 2016, third in 2017. So we are now re-releasing that entire trilogy. We're going to update it, add new information, new chapters, new essays, and it's going to be released as one book called The Conscious Resistance, and it's going to be translated into Spanish and French initially, and potentially Italian and German. So I'm really excited about that. We are writing the book right now. I mean, other than writing these articles, I'm just working every day on editing the book and going through our books again with John. And I'm also writing another book for the fall. But yeah, so we have a publisher now, and that's freaking awesome. Not only are they going to they're going to re-release The Conscious Resistance, the new updated version in English and in Spanish and French, but also my most recent book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, that many of you seem to appreciate, is going to be translated to Spanish and French. And that's what I'm extremely excited about, because we can send it to our friends in France and Canada who speak French, and to our friends all across Central America and South America and Spain and wherever else in the world people speak Spanish, to read the book now and to understand the technocratic state, because as many of you have realized, it's become more important than ever. I mean, I wrote this book before COVID-19 was going on, but a lot of the things I talked about in the book are now happening in response to the virus. So yeah, exciting things. We got events tomorrow, 2 events tomorrow, a permaculture event Sunday. Check these out on the website. If you go to theconsciousresistance.com/tour, you'll see all of our upcoming events and stuff. Also, lots of you have been ordering t-shirts. We still do have Conscious Resistance t-shirts, so that's cool. I'll show you the one I'm wearing right here. You are beautiful, you are powerful, you are free. Of course, we got those in all kinds of colors. But all right, guys, let's move into it. Before I cover my articles, I'm going to cover a few, just briefly mention. We're not even going to dive deep. I'm just going to share the links of some articles that I found interesting this week, which, by the way, if anybody's interested, I do have a Telegram channel called Derrick Broze's Daily News for those who are on Telegram. And all it is just not only the articles that I write, but articles that I read throughout the day. I read articles about politics and surveillance. I read mainstream, independent, left, right, centrist. I read psychedelic news. I read just anything I'm interested in. So I post it there just for anybody who wants to get into that. It's called Derrick Broze's Daily News. If you're on Telegram, hit me up. I appreciate that. All right, so let's dive into these articles. These are some more of the content that I've been keeping my eye on and I think are pretty interesting. So I hope you guys will as well. And if you don't mind, please do share this content everywhere you can. It's much appreciated. All right, so this one is called Meet the New Generation of Tax Resistors Refusing to Pay for War. Both of these next two articles are coming from wagingnonviolence.org, which I think they occasionally do, or not occasionally, but often do some good work. They come from probably a different political background than I do in some areas, but when it comes to tax resistance, this is something I'm completely for. And actually, this is something that me and John Vives wrote about in our book, Manifesto of the Free Humans, about the only way that I've believed for a long time, besides agorism and opting out and pulling your money out of the banks and pulling your energy, your time, and your moral and spiritual support out of these systems, is to find ways to stop paying taxes. Now, I know a guy who hasn't filed taxes since ever. And around the time he was supposed to file as an adult, he decided not to file. And it's been 10 years now, and he's never been harassed by anybody. Perhaps because, you know, there's 2 strategies as they outline in this article: living below what they call the poverty line, which is about, I think, $12,000 a year, $12,400 right here. Or also some people have filed their actual taxes, but just any money that they owed the government, because taxation is theft, it's all the government taking from you. Anything that the government claimed they owed, they would just then donate to say, hey, I donated the money to the Iraq Veterans Against the War, or I donate to some organization because I don't want my tax dollars to go towards surveillance or war or whatever. And people have used this effort. It's tried and true. When did the first, so originally the War Resisters League was in 1923. And, we have other examples of War Tax Committee, Anti-War Tax Committee, just groups like this. And many of them have been very successful. This one's called the National War Tax Resistance Committee. Let me see if I can find the full name. And yeah, my point is that I remember when I first started waking up, this is one of the first things I investigated and looked into and started to understand. And this is a common ground, I think, where people on the left, the right, whatever, can understand we don't want war. We don't want to fund much of what the state's doing. We have to find ways to hide your money from them, or keep them from even taking the money. Use cash when possible. Use alternative currencies. Use localized currencies. Use actually decentralized digital currencies. Don't use state currencies. Don't use bank cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies. Find ways to exchange value without the state being able to keep track of it. Now that's what agorism is about. Moving to the black and gray markets. I know that's difficult for some people, but I just want to share this article with you. I will post these links once I finish going through them. The second one is from Waging Nonviolence as well, and it's called How Permaculture Can Build Resilience and Meet Basic Needs During a Pandemic. As COVID-19 spreads, people are showing a growing interest in permaculture principles and techniques to heal their lives, communities, and the planet. And they got this really awesome garden here. Now, many of you know that I am in Mexico right now, and I came to Mexico, I guess it's been 2 months now, 8 weeks ago yesterday. And we came here to get away from some of the craziness that I anticipated was coming in the US and that I anticipated is coming in the fall. But we also came here to look for land, and I've been inspired by permaculture for the last few years by various communities, and we're going to be taking a permaculture design certificate course at some point this summer. So this is becoming more and more part of my life and what I'm engaged in, and the community, wanting to build intentional communities, decentralized networks, using freedom cells. Permaculture is very much a part of that. And if you're new to permaculture, well, then start with this article. I can also suggest some other resources on how to get involved in permaculture and just learning some basic pieces of information. In fact, if you join the freedomcells.org website, which we recently put up, you can go on there, and I created a permaculture resources group or a cell on there, and you can find more information, and we got people joining there. So yeah, both those articles, Meet the New Generation of Tax Resistors and How Permaculture Can Build Resilience and Meet Basic Needs During a Pandemic, are from Waging Nonviolence. Then I'm going to hop over to this website, which I've never heard of, and I haven't read every single thing on it, so I can't claim to say I would agree with everything on here. But this was a very good article and a good find. It's from Makia Freeman from the Freedom Articles. April 22, 2020, Rockefeller Foundation paper urges testing and tracing of entire U.S. population. Now, we're going to talk about contact tracing tonight in relation to the articles that I've recently put together and some of Whitney Webb's investigations and others. But this, and many of you have heard, you guys know about the Rockefeller 2010 exercise. What was it called? I can't remember what the full document's called, but the actual scenario is called Lockstep. And so the Rockefellers were involved in that. And then, of course, we have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with Event 201. And then apparently just last month, and this kind of snuck by, I know I didn't see this, but apparently this writer did, and maybe some other folks, says that last month on April 21st, the Rockefeller Foundation released a paper entitled National COVID Testing Action Plan, Pragmatic Steps to Reopen Our Workplaces and Communities. And this article just kind of goes through, talks about, of course, the COVID healthcare core, how we need to have 100,000 people and perhaps as many 300,000 people hired to undertake a vigorous campaign of test administration and contact tracing. Then they talk about the 1-30-30 plan, which aims to test every single American within 6 months. One, creating an emergency network for COVID-19 testing to coordinate and underwrite the testing market. Launching an 8-week national testing laboratory optimization initiative to increase output to 3 million tests per week. And investing in a testing technology accelerator to further grow U.S. testing capacity from 3 to 30 million tests per week. And to talk about a real-time data platform. Then this is an interesting thing here. The 2020 Rockefeller Foundation paper calls for a unique patent identification number. And so that's, Bill Gates calls it a digital certificate or immunity passport, but this is kind of a similar thing. And right here, look, the Rockefeller Foundation paper from just 3.5 weeks ago, or maybe, no, actually just 3 weeks ago, says, quote, some privacy concerns must be set aside for an infectious agent as virulent as COVID-19. So already setting the stage, like forget your privacy. Allowing the infection status of most Americans to be accessed and validated in a few required settings and many voluntary ones. Those screened must be given a unique patient identification number that would leak to information about a patient's viral, antibody, and eventually vaccine status under a system that could easily handshake with other systems to speed the return of normal societal functions. Schools could link this to attendance lists, large office buildings to employee ID cards, TSA to passenger lists, and concerts and sports venues to ticket purchases. So this is all coming from this Rockefeller document, which I have opened over here. National COVID-19 Testing Action Plan, pragmatic steps to reopen our workplaces and our communities. I mean, it's all in here, guys. Go through this thing. There's more to it. I don't want to spend the whole time covering this, but this is a great find from Freedom Articles, April 2020, Rockefeller Foundation paper, or just testing and tracing. It was just published yesterday, so I haven't really seen anybody else talking about it. Great job. Now, another article that I want to recommend that is not written by me comes from Corey's Digs, which some of you may be familiar with. Now, again, I can't claim I support everything that the writer stands for, but I know they've done some good work. And this one was just published today as well. PIH, Bobby Rush, and the truth behind contact tracing surveillance. And some of it is things that I'm going to cover here that I've already reported in my articles. Others are more specific, like I don't know if Corey is a girl or a guy. I'm sorry, guys, I don't know. I think it's a woman. But the writer shows that Bobby Rush is the person who introduced the 6666 Trace Act, and that he has attended the Aspen Institute Congressional Program in Africa, and he was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So just another connection. But yeah, there's some good stuff in there, including a picture of these RFID vaccines that I'm sure more of you are starting to hear about. Now, to be clear, like the vaccines are not, I don't think the RFID chip is being is injected inside, at least not yet, right? But this is one of the companies that's involved with this, Apoject, with an optional RFID NFC tag on each BFS pre-filled syringe. So it's on the syringe itself. It's not saying it's implanting a RFID chip. I just want to make sure before people start accusing me of fake news. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't eventually be something of that sort. But yeah, that article as well. And then one more over at Last American Vagabond, guys. Go ahead and check out this new crazy, awesome, super in-depth article from Whitney Webb, the head of the Hydra, The Rise of Robert Kadlec, which kind of everything that Whitney's covering is kind of paralleling where I'm at. We're both researching similar topics, but just different areas because the web's so freaking huge. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share all these links with you guys right now. So, and then we're going to dive into my 5G story from MintPress, and we're going to talk about, I wrote 4 articles, recent articles for The Last American Vagabond about contact tracers, about the fact checkers that are ruining and killing independent media, about this state. If you guys didn't know this, there's already a U.S. state that has already, this is brand new. I haven't seen anybody else report on this, but I did see a meme floating around. There's already a U.S. state that has it on the books that they can force you to be vaccinated, guys. So those of you telling me it's never going to happen, you need to wise up and pay attention. Then you got this one, Trump appoints big pharma exec connected to Bill Gates to head vaccine developments. This is all breaking news just from today. These are articles I just put out, and then we're going to get deep into the whole contact tracing. And then finally, the one thing I want to mention, yeah, I'm saying we're going to do this in an hour, we'll see, is this crazy thing about this mom, or maybe we'll just touch on this before I get into my stories. This mom, did you guys see the video floating around of this mom and her 4-year-old son on her arm as the Australian police in Sydney are like ripping her out of their New South Wales, are ripping the kid out of the mom's arms. They drag her into a police van as her son's screaming, and they like literally throw and toss this woman, kick her into the van and shut her closed like it's a kidnapping. I mean, it's just crazy because she's not social distancing. She was at a protest, where people are a kind of anti-lockdown protest. And I mean, I watched the video earlier. I don't know if it's the full thing's out there. I'm sure it is on some channels. I know I saw it on High Impact Vlogs earlier. But man, I'm going to be real. It brought me to tears watching that video. Just like, what the fuck? This is exactly why I'm not in the US right now, but this is in Australia, right? And at the same time, the recognition that this can happen anywhere, guys. We're at a stage now where the tyrants feel free to do stuff like that, to literally rip a woman and her child apart and stuff her into, a freaking, paddy wagon because she was not social distancing. I mean, you got to ask yourself, are these the kind of things that you guys are okay with? I mean, moms, family, like friends, brothers, sisters, like ask yourself, is this something that we should be accepting and normalizing, or should we be pushing back in every possible way? Now, before I get too long-winded, I will say that on the freedomcells.org website and on my YouTube channel, on my website, if you search how to respond or how to react to violent cops or something like that, I talk about how you could handle this situation. When the cops start grabbing somebody from your community and you know it's unjust, what happened in this case, everybody just videotaped. That's it. So what if the cops would have killed that woman? Everybody just would have videotaped and it would have been like Eric Garner and another person gets killed and that's it. I mean, we have to think about this. I don't think that filming is enough anymore, if it ever was. We have to really consider the repercussions of doing nothing, of just sitting by and watching as a woman is ripped away from her child. And yeah, this is going to happen in different parts of the world, different parts of the country. Unless, now think about this, my alternative solution is with Freedom Cells, is with your Freedom Cell, your group of 5 to 6, 7, 8, 9 people, whatever you can put together to start off with. Maybe you got a big one and you guys are collaborating together to build a cell that can be organized and learn about permaculture and can be unplugging from the systems and using alternative currencies. But also maybe you're a cell that's prepared for the potential for a violent cop or a violent criminal of any type, or the CPS because you didn't vaccinate your kids or whoever it may be, to come and take your children or somebody from your community or kidnap somebody because they didn't pay their taxes. What are you going to do about it? Realistically, think about it. What are you going to do? Guys, I'm posting all the links there for you in the comments. What are you going to do about it though? I mean, are we just going to film? Are we just going to stand there? I'm not inciting violence at all. Nobody's, take it that way. What I'm saying though is if you have a Freedom Cell, you can do role playing. You can say, okay, you pretend to be the asshole cop that's starting to rip this woman away from us, right? How do we respond? We used to do this when we were doing cop watching. We would simulate and practice. Okay, what happens if, the situation's on this side? Okay, you guys come on here and you film from this angle, you film from this angle, you step back and make sure you can film behind everybody, right? My point is preparedness. That's what Freedom Cells are about. If we can build this better world, it's going to take effort, it's going to take planning, and it's going to take more than just standing by and filming. Look, I'm thankful that the people were at least screaming at the cops and yelling like, hey, let her go, and that was cool to see. But like I said, we're at a point where that's not enough anymore, guys. If it ever was, we have to start resisting. Imagine how they will respond. And that's the thing. I'm here in Mexico, right? This has happened in Mexico. This is not some fantasy. I'm less than 2 hours from where I am right now. Well, I don't want to give away too much about where I am. But in Cherán, Michoacán, in I think 2014, they kicked out the narcos, they kicked out all the cops, they kicked out the corrupt political parties, they banned all political parties, banned all cops, they ran them out, they took away their guns, and they reestablished their own indigenous form of governance and of being able to take care of themselves. And they just celebrated this April their 8th year anniversary, I believe, of doing that, of kicking the cops out. And so this can happen. You might think it could never happen in the United States, but imagine how the cops in Australia, the United States, UK, France, Germany, Australia, wherever you're at, how they would respond if the people didn't just come at them like a violent mob, but the people came at them in an organized way and said, hey, you're grabbing that woman and somebody's coming in on this side, somebody's coming in on this side, and you're doing it in a forceful but not attacking way, just making it clear, we're not going to let you take this woman. Let her go. Let the child go. This isn't going to end well for you guys. And you surround, do whatever you have to do. I'm not trying to get myself in trouble here, but the point is communities need to be prepared if we're ever going to move past the stage of just being reactive and letting these people control the game, because that's where we're at now, is where they do something and we respond. They do something and we respond. And we try to, now we're at the point where, outrage, they took somebody, they abused somebody. Well, what else do we think is going to happen? What else do you think is going to happen in these situations? Of course, they're going to be taking people. This is how it's going to happen. So unless we band together, we start using the concept of Freedom Cells and start thinking about how we respond in a very real way to violence. And again, this violence could be somebody from the CPS, a local violent police officer, a violent criminal off the street who's trying to mug you because he's high on drugs, or just some stranger that's, being an idiot. The point is, your community is only as free. I've come to realize this more and more, especially with everything going on. Our communities are only as free, and any community that I built here and in Mexico or anywhere else as part of this network of free communities in the Underground Railroad, any community that is not able to defend itself is basically not free. You're only free until that moment. But then as soon as somebody comes on and says, hey, we're taking this from you, or we're a violent criminal, we're taking your kids because we don't like your religion, we don't like the way you medicate, et cetera, well, then you're not free, and that proved it right there. Sorry, guys, I have to move a little bit. I'm more comfortable sitting like a duck like this. Just a little bit of background information on me. All right, let's get into these articles. I think I've rambled enough. We covered some stories. I posted all those links, so those of you guys who, again, want to keep up with the things I read, you can get on my Telegram channel at Derrick Broze Daily News. You can check out the links that I just shared there. I've got 5 articles to go over, and let's do it. Let's hit it, guys. Again, my name is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network. If you are watching on YouTube or Facebook, I want to recommend you join me on Float, float.app/consciousresistance. I'm live over there. If it's working, I haven't had a chance to go check. Anybody want to go check out float.app/consciousresistance? Or anyone who's watching, let me know. I don't know if I can see the comments on here, but just, yeah, somebody go peep over there. All right, let's dive into my first report from MintPress News on 5G. And this one, pretty cool, was shared by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. just yesterday, I believe. How big wireless lobby governments to build 5G for citizen data collection and surveillance. It's not my favorite title, I will tell you. You know, I deal with editors, so I don't always get to name things, and sometimes I don't have a good name. But while selling 5G technology to the public as a means for faster downloads, big wireless, comprising a web of telecom companies, lobbyists, and law firms, is spending millions to lobby the governments around the world to implement the next generation of cellular technology, partly because of its data collection and surveillance of citizens. Others would say because it's some sort of population control method. I don't know. We'll get into that. But the focus of this article, some of it presents information that I've already gone over in my documentary, The 5G Trojan Horse, which, by the way, guys, the documentary just passed 100,000 on YouTube. So fuck yeah, awesome. Thank you to everybody who's doing that. Because it's, I think, one of the most, and I've been told by other people, this is not me just tooting my own horn, that it's one of the most credibly fact-based research on 5G available. Because when I started searching for information on 5G and documentaries, most of them were very hyperbolic and exaggerated and just kind of doomsday, and I don't think you can really get the public to listen with that. You can get the public to listen, the Mr. Mainstreamer, if you show them something like this article that I wrote, which is about 4,000 words. I went a lot deeper than I was planning to. And as I said, it touches on some of the things I cover in the documentary, like the fact that Trump has supported 5G back in 2019, 2018, 2019 December, and 2019 when he had issued an executive order which said that all states and localities had to comply with requests from cell companies for small cells. So basically a corporation says, hey, we want to build something in your community, and the government, the federal government saying, hey, you can't say no. You have 90 days to approve it, figure out how, you can't charge them too much either. Oh yeah, you can't fight this over health concerns, but if you don't like the way it looks, we'll turn it into a palm tree for you, okay? And that's basically what's been going on. And then, of course, once this whole COVID-19 thing started, the Trump administration passed the Secure 5G and Beyond Act. There was also the Broadband Deployment Accuracy and Technological Availability Act, or the Data Act. And remember, data is the new oil. And they want to mine it like oil. They want to mine it for your resources, your data, for selling you advertisements, for getting to know you, for location tracking, for feeding it to AI systems, etc. Now, this is a 2-part investigation that I'm working on. Part 1 of this investigation takes a deep dive into the web of big wireless, who those companies are, its lobbyists, law firms, and industry as a whole that are spending millions of dollars pushing for 5G around the world. And this is not, you know, focused on the health or civil liberties per se. It's more just about who is big wireless, basically, and who's behind this push to the race to 5G. And then in part 2, I'm going to be looking more at the surveillance aspects, which are just some of the things I've covered in other areas, but we're going to put some more information in there. I'm going to do some new interviews, so look out for that one. It'll be on MintPress coming forward. Yeah, so we're going to skip all the basics. Who's behind the race to 5G? This is where it gets important. Here's the juicy stuff, right? This is what you guys like. And we probably need to make a mind map on this one, dude, just with like all the gates, you know, because my big investigation I'm working on right now, which is for the last American Vagabond, it's not going to be one we're covering today, it should be out next week, is about Bill Gates and Fauci and that whole web and connection and how far back it goes. And some of the pieces I've already been uncovering are related. And the 5G stuff, Bill Gates, you got to remember, Bill Gates is invested in geoengineering. He's invested in 5G. He's invested in genetically modified foods. He's invested in transhumanism. He's invested in contact tracing, vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to uncover and pull apart this web. And the web at the center is this organization called the CTIA, the Cellular Telecommunications and Internet Association, which was established in 1984. And they're basically the wireless communications industry lobby, and also for carriers and for equipment manufacturers. So everybody who, from the people who build the infrastructure to the people who build the antennas and build, you know, software. The CTIA represents all those different folks, and they've been around since the 80s, which is really the birth of the modern cellular industry, when cell phones first started to come about, car phones, and then 1G was in 1979. So yeah, so they've been around for quite some time. And as with Monsanto and Bayer, Monsanto and the FDA and the USDA, and as with the CDC and the vaccine industry, there's a freaking giant revolving door where all these mofos just walk through it, and they go from lobbying for the government or lobbying for the wireless industry to working in the government to working in the CTIA, and literally back and forth. And so I'm going to name a bunch of names, and this is why I was saying we need a map to put this all together. But the CTIA's board of directors, it includes the president, CEOs, and other senior officials of Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, Nokia, Ericsson, Intel, General Motors, TracFone, Easy Texting, and others. Brad Gillen, who is the current executive vice president of the CTIA, was also formerly a legal advisor to a former FCC commissioner, and he also served in other policy roles at the FCC and with Dish Network. So just right there, the current executive vice president of the CTIA, which is the lobby for big wireless, previously worked as an advisor to an FCC commissioner, as well as other senior policy roles at the FCC, and worked in a cable company with Dish Network. He was also a partner at a law firm, Wilkinson, Barker, and Nauer, which is a law firm that's stacked with former employees of the FCC, as well as other trade groups like the NTIA, the FTC, and other state government positions. The current president and CEO of the CTIA is Meredith Atwell Baker, and she has spent the last 2 decades bouncing between lobbying for the telecoms and working for the government. From 1998 to 2000, she worked as Director of Congressional Affairs at the CTIA. Then in 2004 to 2007, she worked under the Bush administration. And then after leaving what's known as the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, the NTIA, she went to be a FCC commissioner between July 2009 to 2011. And then in 2011, she voted in favor of Comcast purchasing NBC Universal, making them one of the next top 5 big companies. And then just 4 months after that, I mean, you guys can't make this shit up. So she's only in the FCC for 2009 and 2011, 2 years nearly exactly. 4 months before she leaves, she votes in favor of this huge position, huge deal to help Comcast purchase and become another monolith in our world, to purchase NBC Universal. Then 4 months later, where does she go? To get a senior vice president of government affairs at Comcast NBC Universal, the newly formed company that she helped vote in favor of. Finally, in 2014, after spending a decade bouncing between lobbying for industry and working in government, Baker went back to the CTIA, where she is now president and CEO, responsible for promoting the race to 5G. And if you guys have seen my work before, you've heard me talk about how the CTIA, they're the ones who give out the award for 5G Wireless Champion Awards, which they gave to Houston's Mayor Sylvester Turner, and that's what I confronted him about more than a number of times. Now, another piece of this puzzle, 2015 expose published by investigative journalist Norm Alster was called Captured Agency, How the FCC is Dominated by the Industries It Presumably Regulates. And it just goes through showing how, again, the industries, these big wireless mofos, and the government collaborate together. They're all one and the same. There's really no difference. And this isn't just starting with the Trump administration, of course. This goes back to the very beginning. During the Obama administration, you had Tom Wheeler, and he used to head the CTIA and the NTIA. Just so much back and forth. The current chairman of the FCC, Ajit Pai, he worked as a lawyer for Verizon between 2001 2003. Then he was appointed by Obama in 2012, and then made FCC chairman by Donald Trump in 2017. In February, he admitted that the FCC failed to protect Americans' privacy after it was recently revealed, I don't know if you guys heard this, that 2 companies were sharing access to Americans' private data. I mean, how often does this happen, though? I think most people have glazed over. It's like, oh, yeah, another company's releasing our data. What else is new? So I'm not going to read the rest of this article, but I do suggest going here. This, I think, is the key part here, a history of big wireless bullying and corruption. Guys, go through and read this section, man, because I found some things from 1992, 1995. People have been trying to warn us about the dangers of cell phones, including people that were funded by the wireless industry and then later shut down once they tried to blow the whistle. And of course, we're being called conspiracy theorists by the New York Times and others for questioning this. But the fact of the matter is the science is on our side, privacy is on our side, and these people are not on our side. So we need to be aware of that, because just like I said in the last last little rant about the cops and not waiting around, not expecting the cops to protect you always, and being willing to defend and protect your community. Don't sit around and wait for Donald Trump or some politician to save the day. Like, don't think that, because God love you guys. Some of you are you're such good people, and you come at me sometimes with, hey, Derrick, should we start a petition? Or, hey, is there a petition I can sign? Or what can I do? And I get it. Like, you guys are looking for something practical to do. But, I mean, come on. Can we please just all acknowledge? Let's just acknowledge, no judgment on anybody. But fucking petitions aren't going to work. Voting's not going to work. Begging for freedom is not going to work, guys. It's just, it's over. If it ever mattered, it doesn't matter now. That doesn't mean your voice doesn't matter. It means that the way they are trying to tell you your voice matters is bullshit. And we are at the point now, as we near the 2020 election, they're going to tell all the young generation again, this is the most important election ever. You have to exercise your voice. Otherwise, well, whatever. It's garbage. The only way through this is unplugging from their systems. We have to get out of their hands as quick as possible. Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, George Bush, John McCain, none of these fuckers are going to help us. None of them are going to save us, okay? I know some of you don't like when I cuss or whatever. I just got to be me. I'm just being me. We're talking real here. We're talking like adults. Let's be adults. Let's acknowledge that none of these people are going to come save us. QAnon's not going to come save us. And whatever religion you believe in, I don't think that our Creator wants us to sit around and do nothing and just say, well, Creator, Christ, whoever is going to come save me, so I literally should just do nothing. There's no reason to be concerned. There's no reason to be educated. There's no reason to warn the people I love because, well, if I go, I go. Forget that. I'm not a defeatist. I'm not going to give up. We're going to continue to try to wake people up, continue to spread information, continue to find land, continue to build communities, continue to unplug, decentralize, and localize. And that is what my presentation is about on Saturday, tomorrow at 12 p.m. Central. So, all right, guys, let's continue diving into these articles. These next four, if I'm going to keep it at an hour, we're going to have to rush through these in 15 minutes. And that's all right, because you know what? I said this to you guys before. I'm a writer more than anything. I do the YouTube thing, and I don't always appear on camera because it's easier for me to just talk and record. But I'm a writer. I love writing books, essays, articles. These articles, some of them I know are pretty long, 4,000 words, 2,000, 3,000. The one I wrote today was kind of short. Just make the time. If you can find 15, 20 minutes to commit yourself with no distractions, just read the words that I'm sharing to you, that I've taken the time to dig in and dive and find the documents and find the evidence, and follow the links that I put in there and confirm for yourself and look at the information yourself and share it with the people you care about. That's why I do that. I don't do it just because, Ryan's paying me for articles, or MintPress is paying me for articles, or for Patreon or whatever. I do it because, like most of us, I think we really want to change the world. And so it's going to take some effort. It's going to take some sharing. It's time for us to get out of our little bubbles and step out of the conspiracy closet, if you haven't yet, with your family and friends, and start telling them, guys, I'm worried about what's going on in the world, and I think we need to come together. I heard about this thing called freedom cells. Maybe we should check it out. Maybe we should start meeting together. Maybe we should plan for what happens if we run out of electricity, if we run out of food, if we run out of all the basic resources that we have become dependent on these systems for. So if you're not thinking forwardly, thinking forward and trying to feel like, like where you can go and what we can do together, then what are we doing? What are we doing? That's all I got to say, because I know that some people will reach out and say, well, Derrick, what do we do? Or other people, the false dichotomy, when I call it Trump's bullshit, it's like, oh, well, yeah, so you must just trust Joe Biden's plan, right? Or you trust Bill Gates. Get out. Come on, man. I mean, it's just elementary shit. I don't even respond to comments like that. Like, what are you, grade 1, 101 conspiracy theorist? You just woke up yesterday. You still believe in the left-right paradigm? And this comment, I want to show some love to this comment. This one too, that one's good too. We got to get uncomfortable. Absolutely. Jessica says we got to get uncomfortable. We have to get uncomfortable. Change is not comfortable. Change is not easy. I was just talking about this with my partner and a roommate, that I think that some of us are so afraid to even change because, we talk to our family and friends and say, hey, if there is a mandatory vaccine, mom, dad, whatever, are you going to take it? I'm worried that you might get sick. I just don't want you to accept their tyranny. I don't want you to accept their mandatory orders, and who knows where it could go. And they say, well, I got to work. I got to work. I got to be able to go travel, or I got to be able to pay the bills. So, you know what? I probably would take it. And, think about how heartbreaking that is to hear the ones you love say that, yeah, I probably will go ahead and just take, the vaccine if it comes, because I don't want to lose my job. I have to work. I have to live in this society. And I think a lot of people are like that. It's just easier. It's easier to just continue going on and doing the things we're doing and assuming that everything's going to be okay. Like, oh, maybe it won't last long, or maybe we can figure it out later. Or, they're just going to monitor us now, or, it's just going to be vaccines for now, and then later they'll let us make our own choices. You know, it's okay. Stop being so difficult. It's freaky, guys. It's some scary shit, and I worry that the ones that we love and care about are going to be forced to make difficult decisions, and you might be forced to make difficult decisions. And this is my whole reason for ranting about planning ahead and thinking ahead, that if we are forward thinking like our ancestors are, every single one of our ancestors made it this far and made it so that we could live and be here today by preparing ahead and thinking for the winter and thinking, you know, how they can stock up food and survive. And we've lost that. We've lost that mentality. We're just thinking, you know, it's a beautiful thing to be right in front and center and be very centered. We need to, you know, be mindful, be in the moment, but also don't lose touch with thinking ahead and planning. And that's what Freedom Cells and that's what the movement I'm building is about. All right, guys, sorry for that rant. Let's go ahead and cover this story. All right, we need an army of contact tracers. Do you guys know this? You heard about this? We need an army of contact tracers. Yep, that's what they're calling for. This one is coming from the Last American Vagabond, just published a few days ago. We need an army of contact tracers to meet the enforcement arm of the new normal. And again, this is another deep investigation into, for one, what exactly is contact tracing, and the recent statements from New York to California to South Carolina to the Indian government and elsewhere, talking about involuntary contact tracing, talking about building an army of contact tracers. This language has been used several times. I also cover what's going on internationally with the Chinese government, the Indian government, the Israeli, and how much of these statements are coming from the WHO, of course, which is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And back in early April, Dr. Michael Ryan, the head of the World Health Organization, he said the following, which I'm sure you guys have seen the video. In some senses, the transmission has actually been taken off the street and pushed back into family units. Now we need to go in and look into the families and find those people who are sick and remove them and isolate them in a safe and dignified manner. Of course, I found out that this guy, he was involved with Event 201, which is, of course, the global pandemic simulation, which took place on October 18, 2019, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Economic Forum, and the Johns Hopkins University Center for Health and Security. He worked with them, and now he's in the World Health Organization, of course, in a position of power magically, and saying we need to go into people's houses. Then a couple days later, this sort of statement was repeated in Ventura County, California, where Dr. Robert Levin said a similar thing. And of course, after public pushback, after he said, so we'll be moving people like this, people who don't want to isolate or who don't have enough room, you know, more than one bathroom, or don't have enough room in their house to social distance, to other kinds of housing. And then they came back and walked back their statement. But the point is, these ideas are being floated out there. And interestingly, though, I did find this piece in Forbes. It says, according to Forbes, nation states need about 60% of their population to adopt and regularly use the tool for it to be effective. Forbes reports that most cities are likely to achieve 60% or even 40% compliance, are not likely to achieve 60% or even 40%. Unfortunately, Forbes reminds us it's a relentless fight, and it takes an army of contact tracers. Forbes also notes that cities will need to, quote, force changes of behavior before reopening society. Contact tracing apps are being seen as one of the conditions of ending lockdowns. And the bolded part, mandating and forcing their use might become a logical next step. Again, enforcing. To all the people who think I'm some crazy man ranting and saying, Derrick, they're not using force. They're just, you know, nobody's saying mandatory. Nobody's saying it's just contact tracing. It's an app. I mean, wake the fuck up at this point. I mean, come on. I'm just going to be real. Let's just be real about it. Like, I'm not in the business of making predictions and saying like this date's going to happen. But dude, if the writing was on the wall at any point, it's on the fucking wall now. That's why I wrote the book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, because anybody without the blinders on and anybody who's been paying attention to surveillance technology like I have for the last decade knows that stingrays, planes that fly overhead that have hidden cameras on them that can scoop up your cell phone data. They have a little gun that can look through your house and detect heat and detect if you're breathing from 500 feet away. Drones, pandemic drones, contact tracing apps, facial recognition, biometrics in general, retina scanning, driver license cameras, AI. This is the future that these people are building. And you guys know this. The coronavirus is only helping to build this and to push it further. Now I go into some more about the apps, and I'll just kind of read the final thought here. Together, these technologies represent the foundation of the technocratic state. built on top of the fears of a public which has been conditioned to accept any and all relief from the terrifying round-the-clock coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic. If the public accepts the COVID-1984 technocracy in the name of getting back to normal, it's likely the world we have known will be regarded as a relic of a past era, a quaint idea of what life was like and what it could be if only the public could defeat the new invisible enemy, COVID-19. However, it's important to understand the institutions which are benefiting from the current pandemic only by acknowledging the true power players, those who maneuver behind the scenes to profit and enslave, can the free hearts and minds of the world defeat the true enemy. And that enemy is COVID-1984. Now we're going to continue our look at some of my reports from Last American Vagabond. If you guys are there, please give me some thumbs up if you're seeing this, if you're hearing what we're doing over here. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network, the Conscious Resistance Live, episode 107, where we're covering all kinds of news and really trying to get you guys informed on what's happening in the world and hopefully a better image of what COVID-19 is really about. So let me make sure you guys can see what I'm looking at. Yeah, let's cover the fact checkers real quick, if you don't mind. Hope you guys can hear me okay. Hope everything's going well out there. This is what I've been doing all week, guys. I appreciate everybody who's paying attention and who shares my articles. If you're not on the text list, join the text list. This is why you can't trust the fact checkers. This is me just going in, providing a little bit of background. If you ever wanted to peer back into what it's like to be in the independent media, I tried to do some of that here. And I say here, for the last 8 years, I've worked as a writer, researcher, and investigative reporter for many well-known American independent media outlets. I've spent my time investigating digital surveillance technology, attacks on indigenous communities, and the overall growth of the government and corporate power. As someone working in this field, writing about topics which are often seen as controversial or outside the mainstream, censorship and personal attacks are part of the job description. However, the attacks on independent media have rapidly increased in the last 4 years during the Trump administration, with many formerly active journalistic outlets ceasing to exist due to lack of traffic and thus lack of funds. And we have seen outlets outright branded fake news or accused of collusion with the Russian government. Some channels and websites have been unable to apply for advertising or use certain digital products based on these labels. Some channels and reporters have been deleted off social media or other digital platforms altogether. And if the social media managers don't delete you, they might just use the algorithm to hide your posts, limiting your ability to interact with the public. So in this article, much like the last one where we dove into who is behind contact tracing, what is contact tracing, just like before we went into what is 5G and who's behind the race to 5G, this one we're talking about various fact checkers and why you can't trust them. And I give concrete examples of how the Mind Unleashed, which, guys, if you've never followed the Mind Unleashed, it's another website that up until recently I've been writing for a couple of years and friends with everybody there. We have 9 million followers on Facebook. We can't reach 100 people because of their algorithm, because of them flagging us as fake news for reporting about the bioweapon related to the coronavirus. And because of that, we get flagged. Our articles, are not seen by people. These fact checkers will email you and say, hey, if you want to correct this and get your little scarlet letter removed, well, then we need you to change the title. We need you to admit that you were wrong. We need you to do, and there's no budging with these people. It's basically do what we say if you actually want to, get this scarlet letter off you. Otherwise, you're screwed. And so the website or the organization known as NewsGuard, which some of you might be familiar with because Whitney did do an article for MintPress a while back looking into the neocons who are involved with NewsGuard. But in Newsweek Espanol, somebody with NewsGuard published this article that at some point just says that the Mind Unleashed is a site that promises to promote and inspire unconventional thinking, but is actually dedicated to publishing falsehoods. So they're out there like straight up defaming us. And of course, if you look into NewsGuard, they're filled with neocons, with a lot of the military-industrial complex, people associated with the Council on Foreign Relations, the American Enterprise Institute, and the Heritage Foundation, and on and on and on. More recently, though, NewsGuard has created a list of websites pushing false coronavirus information. I'll show you guys this list, and a list of super spreaders of false information. These lists include many well-known and credible independent media outlets. And that's not to say that every website listed on there is credible and should be supported. The point is that these type of lists only serve to blackball certain outlets and schools of thought which counter the mainstream version of events. And so I give some more examples of how we've been fact-checked by a website called Lead Stories, which is run by a bunch of CNN employees, former and current CNN employees, including a former editor-in-chief who worked for CNN for 26 years, and who claims that he did groundbreaking investigating on the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, However, remember that the CNN is a super spreader of propaganda and fake news because all of them helped cover up the Epstein crimes, and that's a fact. Then we also have, so we got Lead Stories, NewsGuard, Africa Check, Science Feedback, these really generalized websites that are fact-checking people. Africa Check, guess who's in their list of partners? The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and George Soros' funded Open Society Foundation. And this is how they control the narrative and limit discussion, guys. So they've pretty much killed the independent media in a lot of ways. I mean, this is why, like, I've written for so many different outlets, but in June 2018, a month after Facebook announced their partnership with the Atlantic Council, which is what the last part of this article goes over here. The Atlantic Council is connected to NATO, the U.S. military. You guys may remember that after Trump got elected, there was these lists that started circulating about false, misleading, clickbaity, or fake news websites, and they listed a lot of independent media websites. And then there was another list from this organization, Prop or Not, that was accusing various outlets of being connected to Russian media, Russian propaganda, including Anti-Media, Corbett Report, MintPress News, Activist Post, and many others. And that was when it first started happening. I was writing for all those websites, Anti-Media, MintPress News, Activist Post, Ben Swan. And then in June, a month after Facebook announced their partnership with the Atlantic Council and they started, going after fake news, everybody basically let go all their writers. All these teams of writers were gone because nobody could afford to pay anybody anymore. And it's only gotten worse since that time, because in October 2018, we had what we call the purge, where, see right here, by October 2018, only 5 months after the Atlantic Council partnership with Facebook, the social media giant announced they were unpublishing or purging over 500 pages and 200 accounts who were accused of spreading political spam. And several of the writers and pages were also removed from Twitter. And nearly 3 years later, we are still seeing the repercussions of the purge of independent media voices. In the wake of COVID-19 and calls for stemming the flow of misinformation, we will likely see more censorship and digital purging. Those who are attempting to stay informed and aware need to recognize, now this is important, getting your news from Google, Facebook, YouTube, etc. will keep you trapped in a bubble of sanitized, state-approved information. Step outside of the matrix and question everything. That was my second article for Last American Vagabond. And these last two, I'm going to try not to take too long. They are very important, though, and I want you guys to see the full one. And before I do that, though, I want to show you the actual list of these fake news propagators, as they say it. Thank you guys again. Please thumbs up. Let's get some thumbs up, some shares, and any of your friends who might want to learn more about what happened today. The last two stories are just about what happened today, Friday, May 15, 2020, related to coronavirus, talking about vaccinations right now in just a moment. But let's look at this. This is the coronavirus tracking information of misinformation, where NewsGuard says they can track websites. And look in the U.S., Activist Post, and I don't know a lot of these websites, and some of them are crap, like beforeitsnews.com. Anybody who's been around for more than a couple years knows that it's garbage. But you also got Collective Evolution. I don't always agree with them, but they're not generally garbage. Fox News, Green Med Info, Health Impact News, Health Nut News, Home Natural Cures, Humans Are Free, InfoWars, IntelHub, Mercola.com, Objectivist.co, Organic Consumers, Pandemic Movie, Real Pharmacy, Red State, Rush Limbaugh, Sign of the Times.net, Stop Mandatory Vaccinations, Epoch Times, Gateway Pundit, The Mind Unleashed, The Truth About Cancer, Vaxxter, Waking Times, Weston Price, Zero Hedge, 4chan, 8chan, all of the natural news websites owned by Mike Adams. And honestly, they do put out garbage, but I don't think they should be banned. And they got UK, David Icke listed, presstv.com. They got some websites from France, Italy. I mean, they have a list of websites all around the world that they think should be taken down. Globalresearch.ca, many of you know about them, the Duran. So yeah, there's a number of websites, and these are what NewsGuard Tech, which again, NewsGuard is connected to all the neocons from the former Bush administration and the new neocons who are still around in the Trump administration. And they're working with Facebook and other outlets to censor the media, and that's what this is. And so now they're putting out this super spreader propaganda information garbage. But all right, let's move to the final two stories of the night as we wrap things up here for the Conscious Resistance Live episode 107, 106, something like that. All right, now let's talk about this. Let's talk about Trump and more examples if any of you guys needed it, because I know some of you are still holding on and thinking Trump's a good guy. But let me just try to beat it in a little bit more. One more example of Trump appointing big pharma exec connected to Bill Gates to head vaccine developments. Ooh, imagine that. On Friday, Donald Trump announced his appointment of Moncef Slaoui, Dr. Slaoui, however you pronounce it, a former executive with vaccine manufacturer GlaxoSmithKline, to lead Operation Warp Speed, Trump's plan to fast-track the development of vaccines for COVID-19. The doctor will serve in a volunteer position. And according to Trump administration, if you guys haven't heard, Operation Warp Speed is working on 4 vaccines, and they're hoping to fast-track these by October 2020, December, and January. And whenever Trump introduced Moncef Dr. Slaoui, he said he believes the goal of vaccines by January 2021 is a credible goal. However, Secretary of Defense Mark Esper went even further and said, we will deliver by the end of this year a vaccine. And so they're really pushing it. And this kind of mimics what the NIH that everybody's been paying attention to, the National Institute of Health. Just last month, they put out a new plan called Accelerating COVID-19 Therapeutic Interventions and Vaccines, or the ACTIVE Partnership, calling for a collaborative framework for prioritizing vaccine and drug candidates. And this all follows Trump's statements yesterday, where he said that they have geared up the military and that it's a massive job to give this vaccine. And I had people telling me this was fake news when I posted this on social media. This is Trump talking on Fox Network himself. You can watch the video. He says, we're going to be able to give it to a lot of people very, very rapidly. And he said his team has been working on this 24 hours a day. Interestingly, though, I will say Trump did admit today in his press conference, he said that they're working on other things like therapeutics. And he said this, quote, it's not solely vaccine-based. Other things have never had a vaccine and they go away. I don't want people, I need to fix that. Ryan, if you're watching, we have a typo right here. I don't want people to think this is all dependent on a vaccine, but it would be tremendous. So there should be the word want right there. So he says we're not dependent on a vaccine, but it will be tremendous. However, when you look at the guy that he appointed today and was praising how great he is, this guy is coming from total big pharma, GlaxoSmithKline vaccine manufacturer background and has partnered with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in more than one way. So that's the bulk of this article here, and I'm going to leave it to you guys to really get into here and find the nuts and the bolts of this, because I don't want to just read my own word to you. I spent all day researching this, so please go read it. But I do think this is interesting. Look. 2016, Slaoui was appointed to the board of directors of Moderna Therapeutics. And remember, Moderna was already recently written about by Whitney, and she talked all about how the Coalition for the Epidemic for Preparedness Innovations was involved and how that was founded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, how they receive a lot of money. And so these companies also have, these pharmaceutical companies also have close connections and partners with DARPA. And, the web is just, it's deep. That's why I'm investigating Bill Gates himself. This is just one piece of the puzzle. And so, to recap, Donald Trump today appointed Dr. Moncef Slaoui to head Operation Warp Speed, his effort to fast-track the development of COVID-19 vaccines and other therapeutics. The doctor has worked in the pharmaceutical industry on vaccine development for decades. Several companies he worked with or sits on the board of directors are funded in part by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. One of these companies, Moderna, is conducting research on RNA vaccines in partnership with the U.S. government's creepiest organization, DARPA. So, again, just to reiterate that, this guy sits on the board of directors of Moderna, and as Whitney showed recently, that they've been working on a controversial messenger RNA, mRNA vaccine with a $25 million grant from DARPA, and was also, again, this was founded and funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So this guy that Trump just appointed is literally sitting on the board of a company that is called Moderna Therapeutics. And remember up here, Trump said it might not be vaccines. Maybe not everybody's going to want the vaccines. He did say that. And he said they have other therapeutics and other methods. He wouldn't go into specifics, but he clearly said the word therapeutics. And get this, one of Moderna's therapeutics is an RNA vaccine. So, well, maybe you don't want that vaccine. Maybe you want one of their other therapeutics. Well, what other sort of therapeutics were there? Well, one of the companies that this guy's involved in is called Galvani Bioelectrics, which was formed out of a partnership with Verily Life Sciences, which was formerly called Google Life Sciences, and is an Alphabet company. So an Alphabet company, Google company basically, formerly known as Google Life Science, Verily Life Sciences, partnered with GlaxoSmithKline, the pharmaceutical maker that this guy used to be involved with, and now they formed Galvani Bioelectrics, which their goal is to, quote, enable the research, development, and commercialization of bioelectric medicines, which, by the way, they want to use, quote, miniaturized implantable devices that can modify electrical signals that pass along nerves in the body, including irregular or altered impulses that occur in many illnesses. So this guy that Trump just appointed to be the vaccine czar, the head of this, vaccine development, is swimming in a sea of Bill Gates' money and DARPA and pharmaceuticals and vaccines and RNA vaccines and all this untested stuff. I mean, guys, this is the reality. I mean, I hope that you are all taking this in and accepting what's before you, especially if you're supporting Trump. Make an excuse if you want. I saw somebody say earlier, oh, the military, he's talking about calling up the military for the mass arrests. Like, oh, God, here we go again. But anybody with eyes, anybody with ears, anybody who's being honest can see what's going on. And the final story of the night, guys, that I'm covering is my little piece about the U.S. state that has already instituted mandatory vaccinations. Did you know about this? Did you hear about this? Excuse me, where are we going? Did you know about this one here? This U.S. state has already established legal means for mandatory vaccinations. Now, the state is Florida. This came about because a friend showed me this meme right here, if you guys can see this. The meme says, my husband flew from Louisiana to Florida for work today. Without notice, he was not told of any of this getting on the airplane, and once he landed, an employee came in and made everyone sign it where they could not leave the plane. So he was basically forced to sign. Fine up to $500 or 60 days of imprisonment. Did you see the small paragraph below? The state health officer and surgeon general can order any individual to be examined, tested, vaccinated, treated, isolated, or quarantined. You probably saw this, but I figured seeing the paper might be real of interest to you. So then here's a little picture of this paper, and this is part of the meme. And so I looked up what it references. It talks about the executive orders, and I looked them up, and holy shit, guys, it's real. This document is called COVID-19 Department of Health Mandatory Self-Isolation Airport Travel, and it can be found on the official website of the Florida Airports Council. This is a Florida government website. The form asks travelers to put their home address, a detailed description of the trip, and the names and birth dates of family members who traveled with them, with the person filling out the form. At the bottom of the form, it states, I understand that any individual in my family who violates the self-isolation or self-quarantine by failing to remain within the confines of the address I provide for my stay in Florida for the mandatory length of time can be subject to prosecutions under these sections of Florida statutes, which if convicted is punishable by up to 60 days imprisonment and a fine of not more than $500. So not just you, but your family members, any individual in my family who violates the self-isolation or self-quarantine. Additionally, it says, pursuant to Executive Order 2080 and the Florida Department of Health Declaration of Public Health, the state health officer and surgeon general can order any individual to be examined, tested, vaccinated, treated, isolated, or quarantined for COVID-19. Do you guys get that? Any isolation or quarantine order issued shall be enforceable by injunction filed in Florida Circuit Court. Finally, passengers are reminded that, quote, failure to follow any isolation or quarantine order by the Department of Health, Florida Department of Health, is a second-degree misdemeanor. Right there in plain language, a Florida state document which is being handed out to individuals flying into Florida claims the Surgeon General can order anyone to be vaccinated. And where does this Surgeon General get this apparent authority? Well, I looked up Executive Order 2080 and the Florida Department of Health Declaration of Public Health Emergency, which you guys should recognize this. This is just the Florida Department of Health. Wherever you live, say you live in Oklahoma, look up the Oklahoma Department of Health. Look up if your state has already issued a public health emergency. Most of them did way back in March or February. And so I guarantee you in this language, as I'm going to show you, that there is very vague and broad language that would allow them to interpret it as, yes, we can vaccinate you. And then the next thing you know, they're handing out pieces of paper like this that basically say either fill this out or you get fined and you got to be quarantined and potentially vaccinated according to the state surgeon general. I mean, this is crazy. This is fucking crazy. This is happening in the United States. The language might already be on the books in other states, and they just haven't used it yet. Just like with 9/11 and other things that we know about. This is how they cooperate, how they work, right? So let's continue on. Okay, so Executive Order 2080. I looked at it, and the word vaccine is not even mentioned one time. So where do they get the justification to vaccinate people, right? But under Section 1D, it states the following. Pursuant to the section Florida statutes, quote, it shall be the duty of every state and county attorney, sheriff, police officer, and other appropriate city and county officials to enforce any isolation or quarantine or order of the Department of Health issued pursuant to this order. And I wrote here, notice the vague and broad or order of the Department of Health. Well, according to this executive order, it is the duty of every state, county, and local official to enforce any order that is given out by the Department of Health. This could easily be interpreted as a legal justification for a vaccination order. And then I also looked up the Florida Department of Health Declaration of Public Health Emergency, and under Section 6, it says the following, that the Florida Department of Health, at such time when necessary, may take action to protect the public health, including quarantine, isolation, or other interventions. What exact treatments fit under other interventions is anyone's guess, but once again, we see vague language that could be easily and broadly interpreted to support orders for compulsory vaccination programs and responsible to COVID-19. And this public health emergency was issued on March 1st. The executive order was issued on March 23rd, and both of them are still in effect and have been extended for the state of Florida. So this guy and this post, it was real. If you see this meme going around, somebody saying, my husband traveling from Louisiana to Florida, that's a real document, guys. We confirmed it. It's real. The document's in this article on Last American Vagabond. This U.S. state has already established legal means for mandatory vaccinations. And those are my stories, guys. Those are my reports that I covered in this last week. The 5G from MintPress. We need an army of contact tracers. I'm going to go ahead and share these. I don't know if I already did share all of them, but in case I didn't, I'm going to share all the articles I just went over from Last American Vagabond. And so, I mean, that's a lot of words, right? It's a lot of stuff to look at. I know you guys have busy lives. You got families, you got kids. You know, you got busy things to do, and it's some cities and some states are locking back up. So I'm sure there's a lot of people who are happy to get the hell out. I would be if I had been locked down. Thankfully, I haven't had to be locked down. I'm posting all the links right now below for you guys to check out. But please do check them out when you have the time. Read the words, man. Check the links. Do your own research. Share the articles. You know, even if you don't use social media, because you know these things are going to be censored on social media, just text them to your friends and say, hey, dude, I read this article. Or, hey, mom, hey, sister, hey, son, hey, daughter, I read this article. It's really important to me. I'm not trying to be pushy, but please, can you take a look at it? It means a lot to me. This is what I was saying earlier about getting out of our comfort zones. We need to recognize that we don't have time to just be, you know, bullshitting around and just waiting for somebody else to come save the day. We got to step up to the plate if we're really going to make this happen, if we're really going to change things and turn them around. We have to be the ones to do it. And that's just the cold, hard truth, okay? So if these things are scary and they're overwhelming to you, don't be scared. Don't be overwhelmed. The origin of the conscious resistance, the purpose of the conscious resistance is to recognize that the struggle for a better, more free and ethical and just world is one that's going to involve confronting the physical institutions of power, the corporations, the state, you know, the Rockefellers and the different names and the people that we place responsible and that we, you know, we blame for what's going on and we see what's going on. Those people, those institutions are one part of it. But there's also the internal world, the internal struggle against our own tyrant, our own doubts, fears, and insecurities. Those are the things that we also have to overcome. And this is all a part of what the conscious resistance is. This is what I'm saying. We have to be mentally prepared. Like I said earlier with the story about them coming after the lady and taking the kid away, or this vaccine thing in Florida, what are you going to do? Do you have any preparedness? If you put any realistic thought into how you would respond to the situation so that if and when it ever does, God forbid it does, but if it does, that you don't just shit your pants out of fear and you actually do something. You take an action and say, you know what, we prepared for this. Come on, the kids go this way, we do this. You know, this is how we take care of our communities. So let's do what we can, guys. I posted a lot of articles and the links in the comments. Go back to the chat, go through it, and you know, you can find them on MintPress News. You can find them on The Last American Vagabond. Again, I want to remind you guys that tomorrow at noon, the Conscious Resistance is hosting my presentation, how to localize, decentralize, and opt out of the matrix. And then right after that, I'll be hosting a Freedom Cell conference call for anybody who wants to get more plugged in and understand more about Freedom Cell. So that's tomorrow at 12 p.m. Central in the U.S., how to localize, decentralize, and opt out of the matrix. If you're watching it here, you'll see it pop up. It'll be at noon if you want to set your clocks. And then at 2 p.m., join the third International Freedom Cell Conference call to learn more about this concept and how it can be useful for you. And if you want to tune in on Sunday to a full day of permaculture, decentralization, community, art, meditation, check out the What's Next Conversations for Change. And all of that can be found at theconsciousresistance.com/tour. Just like my documentaries can be found to view for free, The 5D Trojan Horse, Who Will Find What the Finders Hides, Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein, as well as all of my books, including the most recent, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. And that is all at theconsciousresistance.com. So that's it, guys. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to close out. What I'm going to do, for those who want to stay tuned in, you guys heard that little thing I was playing in the beginning, the Conscious Resistance documentary featuring my words. We're going to go ahead and continue that. It's about 20 minutes long, and I think we played a 7-minute little clip of it. So if you guys want to stay tuned in, stay plugged into that, and we're going to let that play. It's about 13, 14 minutes longer. Got some music, got my words, It's all about what the conscious resistance is. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. If you support my efforts and you got $1 or $2 more and you can afford it, please go to patreon.com/Derrick Broze to continue supporting me. I'm being funded now by MintPress for my articles. I'm being funded by The Last American Vagabond. And the work you guys do through Patreon and through PayPal donations, all of that goes to funding my documentaries. And we have a very big documentary coming out. It's called The Pyramid of Power. If you guys heard me on tour 2 years ago, then you heard me talk about this. And I'm basically going to be exploring all the various systems. Some of the things we talked about today, all the various systems that that are trying to keep us from being free. You know, and it's up to us to step up to the plate and again to unplug and opt out of those systems. So I'll be covering lots of that information. Stay tuned for that very soon. It's called The Pyramid of Power, and we'll be getting into all of that. And I'm going to just go through a couple of comments before I do sign off and we go ahead and get out of here for the night. Thank you again, guys, though, for all the comments, the likes, everything. It really does mean a lot. I appreciate it. And, you know, I do put a lot of effort. I sit here on my ass, unfortunately, doing a lot of research, try to go out and bike ride and enjoy the beautiful day and buy some fruit and hang out with friends. And we've been looking for land, and there's so much coming up that I'm going to share with you guys really soon about where I'm at in Mexico, what we're building, the future of the Underground Railroad, the future of the Conscious Agora, and the community that I'm building. So if you're interested in that, please stay tuned. Probably next week we'll do a video all about Mexico and what's going on out here and where I have been. So thank you guys again so much for your time, your energy, and your beauty, sharing this journey with me. Until next time, my friends, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.
Society is a place where every man, woman, child, being is able to express themselves fully without the threat of force or violence against them for their choices in their own lives. To me, this is also what is known as anarchy. Anarchy coming from two Greek words, and signifying no or without, and arch, meaning government, hence anarchy meaning no government. And in an anarchist society, we would have what is known as voluntarism, the belief in creating a voluntary society without force. The ideas of the non-aggression principle, the ideas that we can all work together and can respect each other and have our own minds and our own ability to take care of ourselves, taking the government out of social interaction and getting rid of this paternalism that we see where the government has control of everything. And to me, it goes deeper than that as well. I mean, recognizing that we have paternal systems that have taken control and we have turned away from the feminine as well, the feminine of paying attention to our planet and to our spiritual side. And so to me, when you start to work towards a voluntary society or an anarchist society, you're really reconnecting back to a closer, more natural state to what we probably experienced in the past. And my research into voluntarism and to create a voluntary society led me towards the idea of agorism. And agorism is basically the idea of anarchy and action. And so taking the ideas of self-rule and creating these better systems and actually going out in the world and doing it. So agorism is what I like to think of as once people have decided to stop reading about creating a voluntary society or an anarchist society and stop talking about it and decided to go out in the world and do this. So you look at any problem that we may face in the world or any situation we're dealing with where there is a state or government option and try to find ways that you as an individual or a community can do it better. So one of these ways is the food. Right now there's a huge monopoly on our lives, and specifically on what we ingest, what we put into our bodies. Growing your own food is one of the biggest steps towards independence. It lessens the control that the monopolies have on your lives It lessens the control that the monopolies have on the farmers that are growing food in other countries, and it also helps us localize and focus on what we can do here at home. And a big part of that for me is why focusing on anarchy and focusing on the self is so important, because we have individuals who are lost in themselves and are easily manipulated and taken advantage of by the state. And they buy into the division, they buy into the fear, they buy into all these different aspects. But when you start to really go deeper with this, and not just in a political understanding of anarchy or global events, but going deeper with it and really focusing on how you can better your local area, how you can better yourself, and all these things, you start to connect on a level that I believe takes you past just politics and understanding of that world. You start to connect with yourself, and when you go out there and you start to create gardens, or you create alternative currency networks, or creating barter networks, or just communicating and talking to your neighbors and moving past division and getting outside of the boxes, the matrix, so to speak, and learning to connect with each other. I think that's what's bringing us closer to evolving as a species, and I believe we are doing this already. The fact that these conversations are taking place, that these ideas are being explored, shows that they are spreading. And so I see the work of voluntarism and anarchism and agorism as hugely important, recognizing the power of your own self and what you're capable of, and the fact that nobody else can control you or should try to control your choices. And in that political philosophy of voluntarism, the idea is that the best way society can improve, and the only way society can truly improve, is the individualist method, the method of everybody doing their own to improve themselves. The idea is hoping that we can each change our individual units, and as we do that and that idea spreads, society will begin to improve as well.
I'd like to discuss forming a synthesis between anarchy and spirituality. Personally, I'm interested in finding common ground between the philosophy of anarchy, specifically agorism, and spirituality, specifically Buddhism and shamanism. Anarchy, of course, is self-rule, self-ownership, and a lack of central authority. When I say agorism, I'm speaking of the philosophy of anarchy that focuses on self-sufficiency, the idea of counter-economics, black and gray markets, and creating alternatives. When I say spirituality, I'm referring to a practice that brings you closer to your nature, to your essence, to who you are. When I mention Buddhism, I'm speaking specifically about Zen Buddhism and the meditation practice known as Zazen. And finally, shamanism. Shamanism has been called the aboriginal roots of religion. All over the world, cultures, aboriginals, and native peoples were deeply connected to nature in the past. They used practices that some in our modern rational world would consider insane. Through the use of hallucinogenic plants, drums, meditation, one could experience a cleansing, a connection, a deeper understanding of self. This is also done through deeply personal journeys known as shamanic journeys. My interest in these topics has drawn me to find common threads between them. My interest in anarchy comes from one of freedom. My interest in agorism comes from one of action, out of a need to create solutions in my life to make the world a better place. While agorism calls for action by creating alternative currency, self-sufficiencies, and barter networks, Zen also calls for action. Agorism is action in the physical realm, and Zen is action of the mind. In Zen, the greatest action you can do is to sit, to still your mind. It's really about being conscious, becoming more aware of your own decisions. And this is about connecting with your mind. These two philosophies both call for action, one in the physical sense, and the other for action in the internal world, but both, again, are about action. So while studying some of the anthropological studies of shamanism from cultures around the world, I've found an amazing connection to anarchy. In anthropologist Michael Harner's book, The Way of the Shaman, he speaks on the reason why shamanism and indigenous teachings were wiped out. He said the following: The reason it was wiped out is because it undermines the authority of the state and church. To have hundreds of thousands of prophets running around on the loose. In shamanism, everyone is his or her own prophet, getting spiritual validation directly from the highest sources. Such people rock the boat. They are subversive. After all, if everyone is an authority, there's little possibility of creating a monopolistic business based on privileged access or right to interpret the words of official prophets or books. It's anarchy. Shamanism is the original anarchy. But I'm not discussing religion. To me, religion is to spirituality as statism is to anarchy. On both of these, we see control and blocks to freedom. Meditation and shamanic practices are completely impersonally direct experiences. Whatever you find there in your own mind, nobody can take that away from you. And with anarchy, we see this as our direct connection to being a sovereign, free individual. There's no authority. There's a direct correlation. So, to pursue meditation, to pursue shamanic practices, it requires letting go of fears, insecurity, and ego. And I'm not proposing we create some new anarcho-shamanism, and I'm definitely not trying to say this is a one-size-fits-all solution, because those don't work. I'm rather providing another option, what I believe is a further evolvement of anarchy. In the New Libertarian Manifesto, Samuel Konkin III wrote, "There is no one way, one straight line graph to liberty, to be sure, but there is a family of graphs that will take the libertarian to his goal of a free society, and that space can be described." I believe with a sense of spirituality and understanding of self coupled with philosophical understanding of anarchy and the role of government creates another solution. If we simply understand the nature of government and the immorality of force, but we don't go deeper and don't pursue to conquer our own demons and to learn about who we are, we skip past the deeper root causes that are the true cause of statism. We may beat this current government and get past statism, create agorist ventures, and find solutions. But I believe in a couple hundred years or so, we will create a new type of statism if we don't pursue deeper levels of understanding of self. And the things that make us mistrust each other and mistreat each other, the things that make us pursue violence, that make us pursue and allow theft, and to be caught into fear. Because as we all know, the state controls us through fear. So as long as we allow that fear to bind us, we are going to keep creating the same situation. Konkin also wrote, "A lot more than statism would have to be eliminated from individual consciousness for a free society to exist." We have to remain consistent with our message and in our actions. When we apply our principles consistently, not only in political and activist realms, but in our everyday lives with our thoughts, our words, and our actions, we are contributing to the continued evolution of our species. If you're familiar with agorism, you're likely familiar with the 3 A's of agorism. Agora, or the marketplace, the exchange; anarchy is self-rule; and action, which is needed to move these things forward. The 3 A's have been reminding me of a paraphrase of a Buddhist saying about wisdom, compassion, and action. The 3 A's form a path to success with agorism, and I believe wisdom, compassion, and action form a path to success as far as Buddhism is concerned. If you have wisdom, you're smart and you're an intelligent person. You understand the way the world works, and you have your view of this. But if you don't have compassion to your fellow human being, then why would you choose to work with them to advance forward? You're only thinking about yourself. But if you have only compassion, but no wisdom, then you're continuously running around and strictly letting your heart lead you, getting hurt and being led astray. So again, lacking balance. If you have wisdom and the smarts to use it and compassion towards those around yourself, but you don't apply the action, then you're still lacking. So what we need is wisdom and understanding of the world, compassion for ourselves and our fellow human beings, and combine that with action. And with that in mind, I like to propose adding a 4th A to Konkin's 3 A's of agorism. I believe anarchy, the agora, and of course action are necessary and are part of the path to success. But I would also like to propose that awareness be a part of this path. Once again, awareness of self, so you better rule and understand yourself. How can you know how to rule yourself, what you want, what you desire, if you do not understand who you are, where you're coming from, what you're afraid of, your insecurities, your doubts, your fears, and how to move past them? You set yourself free with anarchy. And of course, awareness applied to your actions. When we apply the same understanding and awareness to our own selves we are deepening our understanding of what it truly means to be free. I hope that each and every one of you will take some time to slow down, be conscious, and to become more aware of your own thoughts, words, and actions.
Sonora, bonita, bonita,